Okay, this session is already recorded, and let's start discussing the midterm exam questions. Again, once again, hello to all of you. We will discuss right now the answers of the midterm exam. First of all, before we start discussing the answers, I would like to congratulate all of you who participated in this examination. The majority of you did well compared to last year's students' performance. You did significantly better. Of course, you had with you the cheat sheets this year, whereas last year was not allowed. But this year, in general, your performance was better. What I found out as a general comment for this exam is that although many high performing students, high performing practically based on your weekly contribution to the case studies discussion. So uh, these students, all of you, the majority of you, were able to answer the first type of the questions correct. I am talking about the short answer questions. And that means practically that you came prepared. So you did the reading of the slides, it was obvious, and you provided indeed you wrote the answers correctly and approximately completely. However, for some of you, you were completely unlucky or unable to choose the correct answer. You got confused, I don't know what happened, with the multiple choice questions. And that was sad and weird at the same time for me, who I marked your papers, because although, as I told you, some of you were completely successful in the first category of questions, in the second type of the questions, the multiple choice questions, some of you, for the majority of the answers, you gave the wrong choice of the answer. And since I found out that this was a challenge for you, I am informing you that for the final exam, there will be no multiple choice questions, any. There will be only short answer questions, many obviously, but only questions where it will be required from you to provide an analysis. So I don't know how relieving these news are for you. I think that these news are good news, considering that the weight of the midterm examination was only 15% of your total mark, whereas the final examination weight will be 35% of your total mark. And let's move on discussing and explaining the questions. You are very welcome, Sadadatul. Okay, I'm pretty sure that you will be happy with this decision. Let's move on discussing and explaining the questions and the correct answers so that I can help a little bit more through this feedback to identify, first of all, your mistakes and moreover, to improve the way that you are approaching the questions and additionally, how you will give answers. To them. So let's start from the short answer questions required. Question number 1. What is the human element of DRM, of data resources management, and how can we make sure that is not lost? I have already included the slide, the whole slide from the first lecture where you can find the answer. The correct answer is that practically the human element, as we discussed in the workshop sessions through my summary, is the experience that the employees, older employees already have, where they were able to give solutions to crisis situations, to difficult situations, and we know all this knowledge to be reported, to be written somewhere. So we as new employees have all these examples and approaches and solutions written down so that we can avoid to do the same mistakes. Okay, so it is the memory of the organization, is called the tacit component of knowledge, is the memory of the organization, and needs to be remained in our company through minutes, by reading minutes, ask them to write reports, and through documentation. This is the correct answer to the first type of the question, what is the human element? And let's move on to talk about the question, I think that it was the hardest of the four. Why do we use the term data governance? Which are the three types of functions that data governance includes responsibility for, and what does each one of these functions cover? We said in the second lecture through my summary that the reason that data governance, we call it data governance, is because of the similarities of activities of what government is doing for a country. Similarly, data governance is doing for a company, okay? So we're using the same analogy, the same representation of government, and similarly in government, in any government of a country, we have three functions: the legislative functions, the judicial functions, and the executive functions. I have extensively explained in my summary that we have these three functions as well in data governance, and the legislative functions are all the activities that the data governors and all the people who are involved in data governance activities are doing for the management of the data, for the usage of the data. So all the policies and standards for the data, how the data will be used, how the data will be presented with a unified way in all the different departments, what type of storage solutions we will choose in our company. So all of this different decisions and policies and standards for the usage of the data and the presentation of the data falls into the first category. The judicial functions are the management of all issues that are related with the data. If we're talking about judicial functions in data governance, if we're talking about judicial functions over government, all the issues that are related with the laws that the government is implementing, and the executive functions are administrative functions, and we need to make sure that everybody complies with the policies and the standards that we have defined in our organization, the executive functions, and everybody should comply with the policies and the laws if we're talking about the government. Okay, so many of you included in your analysis some activities, but you were unable to categorize these three functions. I wanted to see them written down and to explain what each one of those includes, because practically are the same functions that we have in government as well: legislative, judicial, and executive. And let's move on to question number 3. Very easy. All of you, I think, succeeded in answering absolutely right this question. Very easy. What is the triangle related to data security management? Obviously, a CIA triangle. Give a definition for each part of the triangle. Correct answer is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All of you succeeded giving the correct definition of what confidentiality is. Confidentiality of information ensures that only those with sufficient privileges may have access to certain information. Integrity is the quality or state of being whole, complete, and uncorrupted, the integrity of the data. And availability is making information and data accessible to user access without interference or obstruction in the required format. As I told you, I will never expect to write by heart these definitions. If you were able, and the majority of you were able, to explain what confidentiality is, what integrity is, and what availability is with your own words, that's absolutely fine. And I considered your answer as a correct answer as well, and 100% correct. Let's move on to the last question for the short type of answers. That was intriguing for some of you. Question number 4 says, should a company's data security policy and IT policy be combined in one security policy? justify your answer if you agree or if you disagree and for what reason. We have explained in the data security lecture through a specific slide that it was included in the lecture slides that although it is common for many organizations, for many enterprises to include the IT policy into the general data security policy, however, it is more preferable to separate them. So although it is common to have IT security policy and data security policy be part of a combined security policy, the preference, the ideal situation should be to separate them. Why? Because data security policies are more granular in nature and take a very data-centric approach. This is acceptable, expected, compared to an IT security policy, whereas the orientation is something different. So the ideal situation will be to separate them. So these are the four types of the questions and the short answers. As I told you, the majority of you came prepared, and indeed you were able to give correct answer to these four type of questions. And let's move on to the multiple choice questions. Before I move on, is there any question for these four answers? Mia, do you have a question or you forgot your hand raised? No, all good. Okay, great. Kezang. Okay, let's move on to the multiple choice question, which I told you it was weird for me because, yeah, great, thank you. It was very confusing for some of you. So let's start with the question number one. Which activity from the data lifecycle are integral parts of the SDLC? And here I am presenting the exact slide that follows after, from the first lecture, that follows after the presentation of the definition of what data lifecycle is and what SDLC is and the stages. And in this third slide says that SDLC describes the stages of a project, while data lifecycle describes the processes performed to manage data assets. But the two life cycles are closely related because data planning, specification, and enablement activities are integral parts of the SDLC as well. So practically what I told you, what I explained you in the summary is that these stages, these activities are practically the activities that are the first, are prior to even the existence of the data or even the existence of a system. And these are the stages that we need to go through if we are the developers of a system. The thinking behind the planning and the specification and the enablement activities that we need to make before the actual designing of a project, implementing a project, etc., etc. Similarly, these integral activities are before the creation of the data and the analysis of the data, etc. So the correct answer is E. Planning, specification, and enablement are the common stages to both data lifecycle and SDLC. Question number two. Easy, very easy. Which stage from all data lifecycle stages adds business value to the data? Only maintain and use. Says here clearly, this is the exact slide from the first lecture. All data lifecycle stages have associated costs and risks, but I am not talking about costs and risks. I'm talking about what is the stage that brings added value to our data, but only the use stage adds business value. Okay, so the answer is very clear, the stage use. the use stage. Let's move on to the more complex questions. Question number 3. What is data governance? Why, is data governance important for organizations? This is a very good question because it summarizes somehow the definition of what data governance is and includes the principles, the activities, the functions, the legislative functions, the judicial functions, and the executive functions that are included in data governance. So we said that in the legislative functions, we need to define, first of all, the data and the practices and standards and the policies that we want to apply for our data, to be able to resolve any issue with the management of the data, and of course the administration and the compliance part. So practically the correct answer is C, to maximize the value of the data, to manage risk, issue management, and comply with regulations. These are the activities that are included in data governance. That's why data governance is essential, because it's responsible to maximize the value of the data, manage risks, and comply with regulations, to slow down the data processes until the company can cope with them. We never slow down data processes, to ensure data reusability through all data lifecycle stages. Obviously is not correct. The data reusability is being made only through the maintain and use of the data, but this is irrelevant with data governance. And to limit access of incorrect data, no, this is irrelevant for data governance. To ensure that data stewards are responsible to analyze our company's data, first of all, data stewards are not business analysts. Their responsibility is not to analyze our company's data. The trustees of the data assets are responsible and accountable for our company's data. The data stewards are not responsible to analyze our company's data. So the correct answer is only C, because it describes the legislative functions, the judicial functions, and the executive functions. Let's move on. Simple question. What does the term data steward typically refer to? As we said, is a person responsible for managing and overseeing data assets. Based on the definition here, I would like to ask someone to mute his or her microphone because there is echo. So data steward is a business leader or a recognized subject matter expert designated as accountable for business responsibilities, ensuring effective control and use of data assets. This is the role of the data steward. It's not business analyst, so it's not an employee responsible for analyzing the company's data. This activity is someone else's responsibility. An employee responsible for data mining activities? Obviously, no. A data encryption algorithm? No. An employee who is involved to our company's activities? This is very general, okay? Everyone is involved with our company's activities, but data stewards are responsible for managing and overseeing data assets, are the people to whom the owners of the data have trusted their company's data. So the correct answer is A. Let's move on. Which of the following is a challenge in implementing data governance? As well, this is a question which confused you a little bit as well. The correct answer is the B, lack of collaboration and communication. And this answer is derived from all of the analysis that you did and all the presentations that you did in data governance, and you included in your reports, if you remember well, and in your presentations, the 4 stages of Tuckman's model: forming, storming, norming, and performing. And if you remember well, those stages are the stages through which we evaluate data governance implementation. Okay, and you can see in the guiding principles guiding principle number 5, which says shared decision making is the hallmark of data governance. So without collaboration and communication, we will be enabled to apply, to perform data governance initiatives. And I think that you are very well aware about that because you delivered a presentation as well. All the other problems that are included, lack of sustainability or data isolation and heterogeneity, all the other problems are somehow problems which data governance is called to resolve. But in order to resolve all those issues and problems, the main challenge for data governance itself needs to be able to collaborate with all the participants that are involved with data governance activities. Okay, the data governors, the data stewards, the audit teams, all of those, they need to be aligned in the collaboration and the communication. So data governance itself need to resolve first the lack of collaboration and communication, and this is the main challenge. B. Let's move on to answer question number 6. What is the role of data governance in regulatory compliance? I think that it's very easy. Not to educate employees about data governance regulations, not to ensure the knowledge of the current data governance regulations, because even though they know the current governance regulations, we don't know if we're following and we are aligned with the government regulations and the legal requirements. So we need the data governance to ensure that data practices, any type of data practices, are aligned with the legal requirements. That is the role of data governance in regulatory compliance. Okay, and let's move on to question number 6. Which of the following is not a data architecture management activities? All of those are, as you can see here, I have included the slide of data architecture management activities. Understand the enterprise information needs, yes, to develop and maintain enterprise data model, the EDM, analyze and align with other business models, define and maintain data taxonomy, data integration architecture, data warehouse / business intelligence architecture, etc., etc., etc. The only activity that is outside of data architecture management activity is the activity that included in data security, to define and maintain data policies and standards. This is an activity, obviously, but is included in data security. So it's outside of data architecture management activity. And let's move on to the EDM, another question that it was tricky or found to be tricky for you. What is the purpose of the EDM, of the enterprise data model in data architecture management? Obviously is to define the structure and the relationships of data consumed and produced across the entire organization. Practically is the definition of what an EDM is. Okay, so here we have the subject area model where we define the business subjects. Okay, and then in the lower stages we are explaining the relationships of those data and the essential attribute which will be included in those business subjects and business entities, how they are related between them, and the essential information that needs to be included as well. This is what an enterprise data model is doing. So defines the structure and the relationships of data. Many of you got confused with the mapping of the relationships between data model elements and other kind of enterprise model elements. Don't get confused with data model elements. This kind of mapping is often done in enterprise architecture frameworks like TOGAF or Zachman. Do you remember at the end when we talked about this model, the 6x6 framework? And these frameworks like TOGAF and Zachman show how the data, the specific applications and specific processes and specific organizations connect and interrelated. So it's something more advanced compared to the EDM. The enterprise data model defines the structure and relationships of data and know the data model elements. Okay, and of course, what else? To define how data flows through all of the system from the beginning of the end. This is part of the externally differs, the design of SDLC, the system architecture, shows how will data flow in and out of the system. This is something that is provided from the logical data models, okay, which we were discussed the previous week through the data development. And let's move on to answer question number 9, which I think that it was the simplest one. Which level of the EDM refers to 150 to 300 significant business entities and their relationships, and this level is developed iteratively over time because, as we said, the relationships between businesses constantly change. We need to update this information as well, and we are talking about the conceptual views. At the top, we have the subject area model. We are defining the subject, the business subjects. And then at the conceptual views, we are explaining the significant business entities and their relationships. Very easy to detect the answer. And let's move on to question number 10, which is the last from the multiple choice questions. And I think that it was pretty clear as well. Which one of the following is not an area for which an ISSP, an issue-specific security policy document, may be used? And we explained in detail through the lecture recording, obviously, and through my summary that all of the issues that can arise with the use of specific applications is included in this type of policy. For example, the use of emails and how I will use the email in the internet accounts, etc. All of these are included in an ISSP. Malware protection requirements obviously is included here. If I am allowed to install and use a software of non-organizational issue software or hardware, if I am allowed to bring my own device at work, or if I am allowed to take a tablet or a laptop from our organization and to take it back at home. All of these usages and cases and limitations needs to be described in detail and included in the issue-specific security policy. The only activity and process that is not part of the ISSP is the D, which describes how a specific system performs. We are talking about the system-specific security policy. Often functions as standards or procedures to be used when configuring or maintaining systems. And the example I have included exactly the same example. How to configure and operate a network firewall. This is part of the system-specific policy. Okay. So that was the answers of the multiple choice questions. Any questions so far? Okay. What I would like to tell you is that, as I told you, I am satisfied with your performance. I am pretty sure that some of you, as I said, high-performing students who are participating very often and talk in the case studies, probably you were expected to perform better in the midterm exam. I understand that, and it's absolutely fair. But have in your mind that this type of examination, the midterm exam, was a very good exercise for your final examination. Consider this as a training. And as I said, if your performance was poor in the midterm exam, you can recover from this mark loss through your constant contribution in the workshop case studies, and of course through the major assignment, the project, which weight is 30% of your total mark. And the other thing that I would like to say is that there is not a must-pass policy here at Murdoch, so don't worry about that. You can recover from this expected higher performance that you were waiting and you were expected to have from your contribution in the case studies and of course in your project and in the final examination. As you already know, in my announcement, I have already included some information about the project, and the majority of you already chose your datasets, and you did very well if you feel confident that the specific datasets will work for your project. I'm strongly encouraging you to start doing your preparation by watching the pre-recordings of the RapidMiner seminar so that you will be in the proper shape for the tool, because the RapidMiner will be the tool for ICT616 for the data mining activities. And once again, as I told you in the beginning of this session, I found out that although the majority of the students were able to give the correct answer to the first type of the questions, the short answer questions, you were very unlucky in choosing the correct answers in the multiple choice. And as I told you, for that reason, in the final exam, which its weight will be 35% of your total mark, there will be no multiple choice questions. Okay. There will be only short answer questions. As I said, many, obviously, because all the topics will be included, but only questions where it will be required from you to provide an analysis. Okay, that's all from me. If you have any questions, you can either activate your microphone or write in the chat. I will be happy to answer your questions. Good question, Eugene. For the final exam, the topics that will be included will be as well from the first four topics. And this is very good because you have already done your preparation with the first four topics and you took the feedback from you right now. So for the final exam, it will be all the topics from weeks 1 to 12. So you need to read all the lecture slides, and moreover, you will need to go back to the discussions that we have done as well in the workshop sessions, and to read as well the papers that we have read, to study the slides and to study the papers that we have discussed in the workshop sessions as well. Other questions? Thank you, Eugene. Mia, is the type of questions same with the midterm for the final exam? As I explained, the first type of the questions, the short answer questions, will be exactly the same. As I said, there will be no multiple choice questions because you got confused. So it will be the same type of the short type questions for the final exam. Yes. Yes, it will be marked out of 100. You are very welcome, Mia. Other questions? Okay, since there is another back-to-back workshop that we are starting in 20 minutes, I would like once again to encourage you, since the upcoming week, the week that is coming, is a non-teaching week for Murdoch University, to do the preparation and to at least start watching the Rapid Minor seminar. As you can see here in your screens, the weight of the project is 30% of your total mark, and you will need to do a lot of things. So besides the report that you will need to submit, you will need to deliver a presentation as well. We will discuss that in detail in our workshop sessions. So there are many marks that you can gain from the project. And as we are discussing right now, the final examinations weight is 35%. I think that through this recording, because I am recording this session, and this recording will be available on LMS to watch it again whenever you want, so that you can take the additional feedback in order to improve your performance in the final exam. This week we are covering the sixth lecture, the data warehousing, which is very, very, very important as well. And we will explain the difference between OLAP and OLTP, online analytical process and online transactional process. So be there, be present in the workshop activities as well. That's all from me. If you have additional questions, you can send me an email. I will be happy to support you and to help you moreover with the project and the final examination. As I said, this session is recorded and I will upload it on LMS, and I will see you all during the week in our scheduled workshops. Thank you very much for joining, and I will see you all in our scheduled workshops. Thank you. Bye.